All right, you're watching the Power Hour. I'm your host, DJ Larry Jones, and joining me again today on the show is author of the book, Wife After Prison, Shelia Bruno. Now, if you watched the show last week, she was on and she spoke about the book as well as her experience. And she's here today to talk about some more stuff that's in the book, and as well as give advice. And, let's just jump right into it. Shelia Bruno, welcome back to the show. How's everything going?
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
You for having me. I don't take this opportunity lightly because what we're going to discuss today, post-incarceration syndrome, it does not get the attention that it deserves. So I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come in and share my story and share the knowledge that I have gained about this mental disorder as a result of individuals being incarcerated. So thank you, Larry. I can't appreciate you enough.
And what an amazing story you have with all the experience you went through. Now let's talk about post-incarceration. What is that? Talk about that.
So post-incarceration syndrome is a set of mental disorders that those who are currently incarcerated have been released. It's most severe in those who have spent a lot of time in solitary confinement. So I tell people to look at it like this. So you have an umbrella. So that umbrella is post-incarceration syndrome. And underneath that umbrella, there are some symptoms. The institutionalization personality trait. There's antisocial personality trait, social sensory deprivation syndrome. There's also PTSD. Then there is the substance use disorder. So all of these different clusters of mental disorders, they make up the post-incarceration syndrome. And
Right.
each of these mental disorders, they have their own set of symptoms and behaviors, right? So that's why, to me, it's so important for those who have been incarcerated, family members, society as a whole, to understand the different symptoms, the different behaviors. So when you see your loved one or you see your employee acting in a certain way, you'll know exactly what's going on with them.
Right.
So
what are the steps that can be taken to fix that situation?
You know what? It's going to, for me, okay, so I'll say this. Some guys have, in prison, I say, what was it for you? So those that have came out and they are doing well, and I said, well, what was it for you, right? And a lot of them, they started doing personal development on the inside. One guy said after 30 something years, he just looked at himself in the mirror and said, I couldn't stand the person that I was looking at. So the thing is, start doing something on the inside. We cannot wait until you get on the outside. And then there are a lot of prisons that do not provide those type of programs. So that's where family members come in. Send your loved ones some personal development stuff. Send them some stuff on mental health, understanding mental health. On my website, I have tons of downloads, PDF downloads. All you have to do is download this information, and there's everything from setting healthy boundaries to mindset, just different categories of information. Download that and send it to your loved ones. So on the inside, they start personal development. And one guy wrote me, he said, I read your book. He said, and I've taken your book, and now we use that as a study guide. So they're studying. So you have to do something while you're on the inside. But for so many, Larry, they are under the assumption, I'm good.
Yeah.
Nothing's wrong with me. I'm good.
That
right?
tough exterior.
Yeah. You've been in a cage.
Yeah.
And if you've been in solitary confinement, you've been in a box locked down 23 to 24 hours per day, and you're good.
No,
right?
It's obviously you're going to suffer some sort of disorder, something is going to happen.
Yeah, and I even asked Kevin one day, and I said, had I asked you before we got married, how did prison affect you? What would have been your response? And he said, I would have told you I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so then after we discovered the post incarceration syndrome, I said, I need to see that it's not just Kevin. So I had a live, and I got 12 returning citizens who have returned to speak on this panel. Their sentences range from 2 years to 2 life sentences, and they were both male and female. And so before we started the dialogue, I asked each of one of them if prison had affected them, and if so, how so? Went around the room, and everybody said yes, with the exception of one who did 25 years in one of the worst prisons in Texas.
Right.
And I don't know whether it was ego, pride, or whatever, but he was like, "No, I'm good."
Now, how does that dialogue begin? Because I would think in order to start the healing process and figuring that out, I would think they would have to find an interest. When you talk about personal development, they would have to find something that they're interested in, that would hold their attention, that they can see themselves making money doing in the future. So how does that dialogue begin?
So it's about change. It's about, not knowing that there's some things about you that you don't like. And how do I change this? Right? So when you start reading and then you seek out a mentor, you seek out mentors, because a lot of those guys have mentors, right? And so, of course, your mentor is going to talk to you about personal development. Your mentor is going to talk to you about your mindset.
The funny thing is, a lot of guys in prison are so talented.
Oh my, absolutely.
It's so much talent.
I have beautiful paintings in here now that Kevin painted while he was on the inside. Just absolutely amazing. But to get to this story where I went around the room and I asked, were you affected by prison? And even Kevin was one who was on the panel, and they admitted yes, right? But the one, right? Only 2 weeks later, he called me and he said, Miss Bruno, he said, yeah. He said, I need to get a copy of your book to my lady friend so that she can understand me. Yeah. So and then there was one, Lester. Lester did 21 years. And when I asked him, and his answer was so profound, he said, can you stand in the rain and not get wet? Yeah. So everyone who goes to prison, they come out with some type of psychological issues.
Right. Now, let me ask you this: speak to the woman, right? Yeah. Who was just a loved one who just was released from prison, and she's dealing with this situation right now, not knowing what it is, ready to just throw in a towel. What would you say to her?
Wow. So as it was, from the first episode, I received a message from one of the viewers. She said, I now understand. She now understands what's going on with her loved one. My thing is this: the first thing that I would say to her is that, you're going to have to educate yourself. You're going to have to educate yourself on post-incarceration syndrome. I suggest, reading up on trauma so that you can gain an understanding. Now, however, that doesn't give anyone a pass to misbehave. You don't have to take the abuse, whether it's psychological or certainly not physical abuse. These are some habits that some are coming out of prison with. So, and then self-care, you got to care for yourself. Right. You have got to care for yourself. So what does that look like, Shelia? For me, I got me a coach to help me navigate the complexities of my mind and my thinking. I did a lot of meditation. I did a lot of praying. I got around people who could encourage me and to build me up. So as I mentioned before, I have a support group meeting. A support group, Wife After Prison, private support group for women only with over 1,500 women in it. And so because of the number of messages that I got in the last 2 weeks, I am now going to relaunch that because there's so many women out there are hurting because of the behaviors that their loved ones are coming out the back gate with. And I have to make this disclaimer, Larry, because there are some that say, oh, not my loved one. Oh, not my man. I'm not saying everyone, but I am saying that there are many who are coming out with some learned behavior that can affect not only them, but family members. The remnants of that attaches itself to the family members.
Right, right. Now, I'm pretty sure there's someone watching this saying, well, why deal with that at all? You know, why would a woman or man stick around and deal with that type of situation? What would you say to that?
So as it was with Kevin and I, we were blind.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know this was lurking around the corner.
Right.
And so it is with so many. You know, they come home and they did all of this time. And a lot of times when they come home for that first couple of months, they're on a freedom high. I'm good. I'm good. Right? Until things start happening, expectations and responsibilities. And then that's when all of that psychological stuff began to surface.
Yeah.
You know, so why would a wife? Let me tell you something, Larry. So Kevin did go to therapy and things were great again, right? And he thought he was good. And when he stopped going to therapy, then those issues resurface more aggressively.
Right.
And that time, but I have to say this, Kevin never laid a hand on me, never.
That's good.
But it was just the psychological, the mental abuse that caused me this second time to say, not this time. I'm choosing me. I wasn't willing to put Shelia through that again. So I say to anyone that, you know, you have to choose you, right? And a lot of time we as women, we're based on potential.
Yeah.
He has the potential to change, but you don't know what you're dealing with when you're dealing with all of the stuff. And I say to family members, you will never know everything that your loved one endured in prison.
Right.
You will never know because they will never tell you. I remember one guy in the class that I taught on the inside. He did 40 years.
Wow.
And he said he didn't need no help. And so when he came out, he didn't have his GED, and I helped him to get his GED. And I said, why didn't you do this while you were inside? I helped him to relearn how to drive again. So why you didn't do this while you were on the inside? And he said, Miss Bruno, I thought I was going to die in prison. He said, I had 2 life sentences. He said, and one night they just came to my cell and said, get your stuff together. You're making chain in the morning. And from there, after 40 years of being in 39 years, because they took him to a pre-release unit, which was 18 months. And so that's where I met him, in the pre-release unit. And he was saying he was good. He didn't need any help, right? So I became his mentor, and I bought him a computer. And every Friday I would go over to the transitional house just to get him caught up on technology and, you know, working on studying for his GED. And so then one night I got a call from him, and he said, Miss Bruno, he said, yeah, I need to see somebody.
Oh.
And I said, yeah. I said, you mind sharing? You want to share what's going on with you? He said, while I was on the inside, I saw someone beheaded. They got their head cut off. He said, now I'm having flashbacks, and I'm seeing that. And so I got him set up with a therapist, and he started off strong. But when you have been incarcerated that long, you tend to not receive feedback or critique, constructive criticism. And so that's what he was not doing with the therapist. So he stopped going to therapy.
Wow.
And yeah, yeah. And one of the other things that I wanted to share is, one of the symptoms of post incarceration syndrome is the institutionalization personality trait. A lot of times, we hear people say he's stuck, you know, in prison. They might say, oh man, he institutionalized, where
Yeah.
some may deny that they're not. But I remember having a conversation with a wife, and every morning in prison, early morning, they have count where everybody has to
Mm.
get up and go to the cell or whatever to be counted. And she would wake up in the morning and she would see her husband standing in the doorway of their bedroom.
Mm.
He was waking up for count, even when
Wow.
he was at home. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And another situation where a guy institutionalized. October, a couple of years ago, I was in Florida, and I received a text message, and it said, I want to go back. And it was late, so I didn't call back. I didn't recognize the number. And so the next morning, early that next morning, I called and immediately recognized the voice. And it was someone who had did over 20 something years in prison. And I said, what do you mean you want to go back? And he said, Miss Bruno, he said, this is a lot to handle. He said, I thought I was prepared, but I'm not prepared. He
Is
said,
that
mental.
some of the what's some of the biggest reasons for being reincarcerated?
What's some of the biggest reason, the main reason? Well,
Is it
it
the
varies.
fact that they just can't cope with society and just felt more comfortable on the inside?
Some of them, because this particular guy, he said, this is too much to handle, the
Mhm.
responsibilities and the expectations. And I said, do you trust me? And he said, yes, ma'am. I said, okay, going back isn't an option. We're going to start anew as though you just came out that back gate. And we'll start with a crawl and we'll turn it into a walk and then we'll run. And he just needed me to have those regular mentors. Just call me when you need to do something. We set goals and I help him to achieve some of those goals. Now, they go back for various reasons. Now, let me tell you something. When I was in Alaska last year, Alaska has under 5,000 people in prison. Their recidivism rate is 62.6. That means that over half of those individuals who are being released will return to prison. 62.6. And so I asked, I said, okay, so when they're reoffending, what is the charge? What is the offense? And they said drugs.
Mhm.
They are robbing or to steal to get drugs to get high. Now, what they did not know in Alaska, that substance abuse disorder is a part of PICS, is a part of the post-incarceration syndrome. A lot of times they're doing drugs to numb, to quiet the noise in their heads,
Right. Right.
right? Mr. Marcus Newton, he confided, I did 19 months in solitary confinement where mentally I came unraveled. So much so that when he got out, he tried various drugs. He said, just to quiet the noise in my head. And unfortunately, he was found in his boarding room house deceased
Wow.
because he had OD'd, just trying to quiet the noise in his head.
Wow. Now, I want to say, let's say there's a young man right now watching this who's just been released and he's struggling with the fact of staying free, staying out. What would you say to him?
I would say to him that you cannot reintegrate by yourself successfully. You're going to have to connect with someone, whether it's a reentry program that has a support group, or you find you're a mentor, or you seek some type of professional help. But you cannot do it by yourself. You will struggle. and you just cannot do this journey by yourself. So my thing again is find you a mentor. And the thing about it is, like I was saying, one of the chapters, these three words, I don't know. You have to be willing to admit that you don't know some things. I don't know. I've been gone, right? Don't let society put this jacket on your back, that you are a less than because you have been incarcerated. No, you did that, right? You did this. And this is the thing, Larry. When these citizens are sentenced, the judge may say, I'm sending you away because you're a threat to society. But what happens when they come back and they are in a worse state than they were when they went in? Says the wife who reached out to me and said, ma'am, I have a black eye.
Yeah.
Only to call me the next 3 weeks, ma'am, I have a dislocated jaw. And I said, was he violent before prison? She said he never, ever laid a hand on me before prison. Learned behavior. Because some of them had to fight to survive.
Right.
Now, granted, disclaimer again, all prisons are not the same, but some of them had to fight to survive. And so it was with Kevin. When Kevin went in, Kevin said he was afraid. So he became the worst monster there was so that he would not be taken advantage of. He had to put that mask on for survival, right? A lot of them, I always ask them, how did you survive prison? And the majority of them said, I had to become, right? Yeah. So they had to become someone that they weren't, right? So they had to wear this mask 5, 10, 15, 20 years. When they come out the back gate, that mask does not get left behind. Even though that they have made some changes, many of them, part of that is still a part of them. And then you come into society, you don another mask to fit in, right? Right? And then with Kevin, there's another mask. You get married, uncharted territory, right? And so those masks become heavy, Larry. And when those masks become heavy, then you begin to see the psychological issues surface.
All right, we're running out of time. We're definitely gonna have to do a part 3 to this. Get the book. Yes, get the book. It's a really good book. I started reading it on Amazon. Shelia Bruno, it's always a pleasure having you on. We're gonna do it again, another part 3.
Sounds good to me.
All right, you're watching the Power Hour right here on Soul TV.